So, welcome everyone to our March meeting. I'm Corinne Bosch, and I'm now the president of SNDA. So, our speaker today is Corey Walsh. She's a registered dietitian, and she educates and helps individuals strategize on new skills, leading them to a healthier relationship with food and their bodies. So, she's going to share about her journey to being ready to where she is now.
Well, hello. Wait, hold on. Okay. It's got a little message about being recorded. Um, all right. Well, thanks y'all for having me. It's really exciting. So you guys are either on your way to becoming a dietitian or maybe getting your master's in nutrition. Y'all, some of y'all? Okay. Yeah, so it's interesting. I kind of stumbled upon nutrition inadvertently. I had grown up here in New Orleans, and I originally was studying music. I went to Emerson College in Boston because I loved music so much from New Orleans that I was like, oh, I got to go into radio production, and I get there and it just really wasn't for me. And then I transferred to University of New Hampshire where we had to take nutrition courses, a nutrition course, everybody did. And I really found that I enjoyed doing the homework. And so I was like, there must be something to this, right? So that's where I got my undergraduate in nutrition. And then I went and did my internship to become a registered dietitian through University of Connecticut, where I did like a year-long program. Because y'all still would need to do an internship to become an RD at this point. So it's been so long. But you still, yeah. So I did mine at UConn. And, it was initially as a dietitian, I always thought to myself that I really wanted to make sure I had a really good foundation with the medical piece of it. So I knew initially that I was going to work in medical hospitals to just really kind of get my feet on the ground there. And so I was doing that. I was doing that up. I don't know if nowadays, this was in 1995 or something, 93. But I was working the Marriott Corporation, like the hotels, had a healthcare division that would would do food service departments at hospitals. So they brought in and did the whole food service, and they would sometimes have dietitians as their. So for a little while, I did something that was called. It was a reserve dietitian. So they kind of sent me around to different area hospitals and I'd fill in on different units if somebody was on vacation or having had a child or what have you. And so that was kind of really cool to get a lot of different experience in different facilities. I was talking to Corinne earlier and I was sharing, and then they, they basically were like, if you want to stay working with us, you need to be placed at a state hospital for mental and physical retardation as a food service director and dietitian. And that turned out to be very stressful, and it just was not something that I think I was cut out for, especially the food service part of it as a very young dietitian. Not all the staff in a kitchen are really interested in listening to a 22-year-old, youngster. But so I ended up moving down to back to New Orleans, where I worked for a hospital and did, all their medical diabetes, heart disease and such, ICU and all that. And it was good and great. And I, enjoyed that. And then though, after about a year, it was getting kind of monotonous, teaching diabetes diet every single day. And and then around that same time, through my mother worked at Tulane and was a Newcomb and Tulane alumna. And here in New Orleans, I don't know where all of you guys are from, but and somebody that had been running the eating disorder program was also a Newcomb alumna. So it just really fell into my hands that they were looking for another dietitian. And I started meeting with them. And, then I started working with eating disorders, and which ultimately we were at a psych hospital up in uptown New Orleans, where there was, there was an adult psych unit, there was mental, adolescent unit, there was a children's, there was a substance abuse unit, there was an eating disorder unit. So really moved from the whole medical into more the mental health, which was, once I got into that area, for me personally, the first year I worked as an eating disorder dietitian, I feel like I learned more that year than in all 4 years, 5 years of college, because it was just so fascinating. Every day was something different, and you're really dealing with beyond just food with these people, because you're learning about their lives and what's going on. So I really loved that shift into the eating disorder world immediately. And, it's so very rewarding. I worked in psychiatric hospitals. We ended up transferring to just an eating disorder unit at a psych hospital here in town, River Oaks Hospital. And it was all wonderful, and wonderful to get to know the eating disorder world. And, because I don't know about you guys, I had like a nutrition counseling class, but they didn't offer a lot on eating disorders when I was studying nutrition. I was more medical and such. But so, it's always, I learned on the job a lot I was fortunate to work with the team of New Orleans. That was a psychiatrist and therapist and very, good eating disorder dietitian, Jan Johnson. She's still in practice in New Orleans, and she's kind of who taught me very originally my eating disorder stuff. And so I was very fortunate. So a lot of that counseling piece I kind of learned on the job, and it kind of fit my personality anyway, because I'm, kind of on that emotional deep side of things. So anyway, so I've loved working with eating disorders. And in 2006, after Hurricane Katrina, I had been wanting to do just private practice for various reasons, including that inpatient eating disorder work is very intense and very critical at times, and stressful and chaotic. And so in 2006, I took a leap of faith and resigned and started working in private practice. And I guess the stars were aligned, because I've been in private practice since and been able to make a living at it. In general, as you guys probably know, dietitians don't generally get paid a huge salary. I suppose outpatient we make more. I don't really know. I haven't compared, but I certainly know outpatient, doing my own private practice, at least I get to make my own schedule, which is pretty nice. If, it can be done at Fridays and at noon or whatever, or be able to go out of town and just really make your own schedule. But, so I love the private practice, and most of my, clients, my area of specialty is eating disorders and disordered eating. And I love, the whole chronic dieting aspect, where, the world is practically on a diet, and all that $7 billion diet industry is really just making America bigger and less healthy. So, I think of myself as I work with people anywhere on the spectrum of obesity to anorexia, anywhere in between, and the emotional and mental health aspects of it. So let's see. I wonder, I can keep talking. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions so far, or offhand? Not offhand. So, so in my private practice, and I was in an office with a couple of therapists, and it's kind of cool, because you generally, with eating disorders, most of your people tend to be in therapy. If they have an outright eating disorder, they need to have a therapist involved. So nutrition is, in that case, is a much of a team approach. So it's known that in eating disorders, you really want the full team. You want an individual therapist, you want a dietitian, you want possibly a family therapist, depending on their age. the medical doctor, a psychiatrist potentially, ideally all of whom know eating disorders. Because you can have a really great physician out there, but if they don't know eating disorders, or a dietitian, who says, oh, you eat too much sugar, and they don't realize what they're saying to somebody with an eating disorder. But it's known to help eating disorders, as y'all may be aware. Are any of you all, I can't see some of you, but is anybody somewhat interested in eating disorder work down the road, or we're not sure yet? All right. So, it's a very collaborative approach. And and to me, that was kind of really cool because you're talking to the therapist all the time about what's going on. And it's all very fascinating because human psychology and the nutrition, one of my main things that I talk with pretty much anybody, whoever walks in my door for whatever reason, is it's about blood sugars, and eating balanced meals consistently throughout the day. I tell people, I'm like, look, I'm not teaching rocket science here. What I'm helping you guys is self-care, because the people that end up coming to me that are struggling with anxiety and depression, and again, whether they're a chronic dieter or they actually have anorexia or bulimia or binge eating disorder or what, it's about self-care. How do I feed myself when I'm super stressed or when I'm sad or lonely? How do I drink enough water? I get a lot of people who, I have a 23-year-old who I think, and, Corinne, you and I were talking about this, at whatever age I meet somebody, everything is back to what happened, how we learned about food and our relationship with food and our body as a child. So we're not pointing fingers, but however I was raised, whatever my relationship around food, emotions, and my body with my parents, or whoever were my caregivers, that's, where I learn. I've had clients who, because whatever their parents never really taught them, they needed to brush their teeth to go to bed, so they don't learn that. Or it's fascinating to me. Somebody else is joining. Hello. That, I've had clients. I remember having somebody who's like a 50-year-old paralegal woman, and she just swore up and down to me that she never got thirsty. She could not drink water. She never drank water. And it's like, how is this happening? But I've come to learn, like, if her parents didn't encourage her as a kid, like, oh, you're thirsty, drink water, to know when you're thirsty. Like, people will grow up and, if they drink a diet soda when they just, they learn. So what's happening in childhood is very important, I guess, is what I'm saying. Are y'all familiar with Ellen Satter at all? She's an excellent dietitian. I have some books over here. I'm going to send names to some of these books to Corinne to get to y'all, but this is a book that I love, is Secrets of Feeding a Healthy Family. It's this woman, Ellen Satter, and she went on to get, she's kind of my idol, because she went on to get like a counseling, and she's a family therapist and a dietitian. She's kind of the guru of feeding healthy families. And that's where it all starts, and if I get people, I'm just going to keep talking here, so you guys interrupt me and what have you. But, 9 times out of 10, if I get somebody who's like, oh, I'm worried about my child's weight, it's the parents that need to be my office, and fix the parents' eating, and then the kids' eating is going to fall more into place. I tend not to bring young kids into my office to, below 11 or something, because, they're going to get a message that something's wrong with their body, no matter how their parents frame it. And we want to be very, judicious with that, so that they're not judicious, but prudent with that they're not getting some message that there's something wrong with them, that they have to see the dietitian. So I tend to work with parents, and usually I find that the parents have some disordered eating stuff, and it's like, all right, we got to fix the parents and the kids will fall into place. Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm a little bit all over the place. Do y'all have any thoughts, questions, comments?
Did you get any counseling training at all to help you be an RD and work with eating disorders, or you kind of figured it out on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it would be really great if I had, but I did it really all, I did reading and such and some CEUs, but not like I didn't go get my counseling degree. Sometimes I think about that. It's just, I wish I didn't have to, you didn't have to do all the actual hours, like 2,000 hours following somebody somewhere, if I could go back and do it again, I would combine, um, counseling or even really honestly psychiatry, because I find it all so fascinating. But there's a lot of great medical doctors out there, and there's a lot of great psychiatrists out there, but if they don't know eating disorders, which is pretty specific, they may not, so, and we don't have a lot of eating disorder expert doctors and psychiatrists and therapists and dietitians. So if any of y'all are thinking about any of those, and of course I'm biased talking about eating disorders, but we need good people, and the eating disorder people, 9 times out of 10, they've messed up their gut. They all come in with all these vague GI complaints, and the doctors can't tell them what's up. But meanwhile, they've been starving and eating and restricting and throwing up, and all these things that are throwing off digestion. And over time, damage is done, and the doctors, so that's an important field area to also, is the whole GI. And I'm very much the non-diet person, because the world's on diets out there, and I frankly get I have a job because everybody's on a diet, and at some point they're going to go off their diet and likely gain more weight, because that's what seems to happen. As maybe you all are aware, but dieting actually is the biggest contributor to weight gain, and it's also the biggest contributor to creating an eating disorder. Most people, they go on their diet, they lose 10 pounds, gain 15, lose 20, gain 30, so they edge up their whole lives. Meanwhile, they're manipulating their metabolism. And, if you get the right brain chemistry, then it really hooks in there. I mean, when you starve the body, when you starve the brain, or do disordered eating habits, or start counting calories, or getting on a scale, or it's a recipe to create an eating disorder. The brain just it becomes brainwashed. It becomes hooked, and people describe it as crazy making. And you hear online, they've been using that term food noise with people taking Ozempic. Have y'all heard that? But I mean, if you ask me, I've heard people have had food noise all along. If you're starving your body, you have food noise, because you're going to think about food all the time. You're going to obsess about food when we're starving. So anyway, any thoughts? Questions, comments? Not offhand. There's so many different ways. This book I love. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this book, or reading up on things like this stuff. Ultra processed people. It's all the food additives and everything, and the fake colorings and the xanthan gums, and are really being shown to contribute a lot to GI distress and obesity. I mean, the processed food is designed really to make us keep eating more. They know that that's happening. And it's a really significant piece, but in my line with my clients, I have to be very careful, because if I've got somebody who's not throwing up and they're eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast, then I'm like, yay, that's wonderful, But on the other hand, eating food that's really processed and void of nutrients, and potentially has a lot of additives and preservatives that our body can't handle, that is not good for us. So sometimes you have to really walk this fine line, you know, of what we're recommending. And I guess offhand, as young dietitians, if you guys are out there, I would be encouraging you to be careful of that and to also inquire, like, are you dieting kind of stuff? Because pretty much everybody's dieting, unfortunately. I mean, I'm pretty convinced after all these years that, you know, most people are concerned about their food and their body in some form or fashion. That tends to be in the diet nature of it. I mean, that's a very general statement, but it's, you know, which is pretty sad and concerning. Um, Somebody else, we were talking earlier, Corinne, you mentioned how you guys are learning really the very medical, right? The American Medical Association of what's nutrition counseling, right? We gotta learn the black and white of the body, right? The medical piece, and but also is then the intuitive eating stuff. This is one of my other gurus, you know, because the whole diet world has us deciding what to eat from our head. You know, oh, eat low carb or eat, you know, this brand or how many calories. It's all head stuff versus what we really want to be doing is listening to our body. I'm hungry. What do I feel like eating? Okay, let me eat that slowly, enjoy it, and stop when I'm full. I mean, that's of course the nutshell of it, and it's not that easy at all. But that's what we're trying to get back to is the intuitives of our, you know, what our body's telling us. Because our body will tell us what we need. If we listen and perceive being thirsty, we'll know we need to drink water. You know, if I'm hungry. So that's really breaking away from the diet approach of things. You know, I've had clients who have, you know, it's not uncommon that somebody has seen a dietitian before me and they went to that dietitian who might have just handed them a 2,000 calorie diet or don't eat any more sugar or, you know, and that can really kind of throw them off because that would just really freak them out versus kind of soft pedaling into it and meeting them where they are. Yeah, so I don't know. Again, I could keep talking, but I'd love to hear if any of this strikes or are there any areas that you guys are thinking about going into or I love working from home. I used to be in an office with a couple therapists before the COVID and then the COVID. And so I've been working from home and I just love doing that, you know, which is a freedom of working for myself in private practice. But yeah, what are y'all thinking about?
I just have a question, like what drove your interest to go down the nutrition route? Like what
Well,
kind of
you know,
made you want to start being a
yeah.
dietitian?
Well, really, it's as simple as like I said, I was I still am a huge music person coming from New Orleans. And I was like, well, of course I want to work in music, but I get to this great school in Boston and I'm like, no, this doesn't fit me. And then I transferred to University of New Hampshire where I was originally from, and we had to take nutrition and everybody did. And I just sincerely was like, oh, I like doing the homework. So maybe this is for me. My dad was a doctor, you know, so I've always been inclined towards the healthcare. You know, we need more doctors that know about nutrition and eating disorders. We don't have a lot of doctors that know about that. But really, it's that simple. That brought me, and then the eating disorder stuff just kind of fell in my lap, and then that brought me even deeper because I'm more psychologically inclined. You know, it was like made it really interesting day to day. Because one of the things I love about my job, you know, the reality is, and you all may relate because I think it's just a human trait, you know, the people that end up coming to me pretty much most of them hate their bodies and some of them hate eating and hate food and they'll have an anxiety attack getting on a scale or going to the grocery or things that we might not be able to relate to. The idea of putting a strawberry in their mouth is like creates a major, they can't do it. So by the time they've gotten to me, they're sharing some of their most intense, intimate pain. I mean, this is like their bit, somebody telling me that when they've eaten too much and they're having body image and calling themselves a fat whore is like, I mean, that's pretty intense. And that's like one of your most painful things in your life if you hate your body and hate eating. So it's really, for me, I feel so honored that people feel comfortable to talk, that I can be part of that. And the eating disorders do have they're known to not have a high recovery rate. And actually, as you all may know, they have the highest death rate of any mental illness, partly from suicide, particularly with anorexics. But but at the same time, it's my observation that, again, it's a spectrum. I've got, somebody who might be a 50-year-old man with children, and he's like, oh, I want to get healthy for my family, so I have a long life. And so we talk just kind of general healthy eating. Or you might have somebody that's way more intense than that. And I have people that I see for years, or that I used to see for years, and they come back when they've gotten married and suddenly they're struggling again or whatever. And so it's a lot more than food, and I consider myself as a bridge between nutrition and emotions. So I'm going to lay down all the black and white facts and make sure they're medically safe. And I'm of the team of the therapists and everybody. The dietitian's kind of is everything stable? Do they need to be at the doctor? Are their labs okay? You got to deal with all that. But, again, it takes a lot of diligence on the part of the person that's trying to recover. I mean, it is not an easy path. And it can be a very long road. And so I think, honestly, and people, when they gain weight or they stop their behaviors, it's like somebody trying to be sober from alcohol or drugs, and they can relapse. And it's really about doing the deep work, which can take a long time, and at the same time, when people are doing the work, it's wonderful to see them healing, and really getting that person I mentioned that was like 24, and she came because I guess, whatever her stuff as a child, but she channeled all her anxiety when I met her. Like, she would have the worst stomach aches before she ever got out of bed. And she's like, I gotta eat. And she'd end up not eating all day long. And, she did this really great work, and she did some really good therapy work. And now she's eating throughout the day. And she's like, wow, look at that. I have such a better day when I eat. Go figure. It's like, I love that, is when people are like, oh, wow, I've been eating lunch or drinking water and I haven't gotten a headache in a week. It's like, yeah, that's what happens, So it's really cool when it clicks for them and they start really perceiving the benefits of having stable blood sugars and feeling their best all day, and, thinking straighter and being able to manage their stress and anxiety better. So, yeah.
I also have a question.
Please.
When you're talking about intuitive eating, how would you go about advising somebody to start that, or I don't know, be mindful of it? Because I feel like sometimes when people hear that term, they kind of what are actual steps you would recommend?
Wait, I'm sorry. It's kind of cutting out. So when people hear that term intuitive eating, what happens? They don't know what it means?
Sometimes they think it's easier said than done. So steps?
Well, I mean, it totally is easier said than done.
Do I keep
and I
cutting
do have
out?
what's that? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, she asked if she keeps cutting out.
Oh, okay. But y'all can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
So,
you.
no, it's totally easier said than done. Mags. Your name's Mags? Um, I've got a magic wand over there that I joke with people and I say it's broken because, you know, this would all be so easy if I could wave my magic wand. You know, we're talking about drinking water during the day, right? Like we're talking about eating fruit or vegetables. We were supposed to learn that in kindergarten, right? So, the thing is it's really about awareness. You know, first of all, if somebody's got an actually sincere eating disorder, anorexia, bulimia, or something, and they, especially, you know, if they're active or they just walked out of the hospital and they're like, oh, I want to do intuitive eating, it's not appropriate. They need to be feeding their body well so that their hunger signals, so that they know really what the, and then you move into with more and more awareness. You know, am I hungry? It's been about 4 hours. How hungry am I? What do I, you know, I really feel like eating today for lunch. So you got to make sure that they're basically feeding themselves well. And then I usually give an outline of like, you know, my general rule of thumb is we eat within an hour of waking up, and meals are every 4 to 5 hours, maybe a snack at 3 to 4 hours, balanced meals. And from there, we kind of like use that as a blueprint, you know, or we pivot around that to decide. I mean, if you are somebody that runs 5 days a week, you're going to have different needs than me. So, but if we basically listen that day, however, how hungry am I? Yeah, it's been about 3, I'm hungry. It's time to go eat, you know? So it's kind of hard to, this book is wonderful. I strongly recommend this book. And she's got, there's a great YouTube where she talks for 50 minutes to a college audience at some college. And it's kind of an overview of all of this. And, you know, cause this goes through, yeah. So this might be something for you to check out. But it's a lot. I also, some years back, I did a yoga teacher training, and I've really tried to bring yoga philosophy into my nutrition counseling, because part of what, you know, if you're going to get more intuitive, it's all about awareness and being present. You know, when most people are not present and aware when they're eating, whether they have a diagnosable eating disorder or not. You know, we're eating so fast and everyone's eating on a rush, and, you know, so it's really about getting more present and aware, period. Especially if somebody's having an issue, you know, if somebody really feels like purging, I'm like, let's go outside, get some fresh air, drink some water. You know, it's like, how do I ground in those moments? Which is really important for us at all times of our days and lives, but especially, you know, these are tools. So, you know, trying to get more intuitive would be, okay, it's been 3 or 4 hours. How am I getting hungry now? You know, I don't perceive that. Let me drink some water. And that may be very conscious at first, but over time, hopefully you're just like, oh, it's hungry. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh yeah, it's 4:30, time for a snack. Right? So you're just hearing your body. Is that kind of helpful? It's a very long answer. There's not a short answer to that. Well, I'm trying to think of what I would want to say offhand. If you did find somebody with an eating disorder, I would want you to get help and or refer them to somebody that, you know, because again, a well-meaning dietitian could kind of aggravate the situation if they don't quite know what they're doing. Or doctor. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I get that are traumatized. They're young and they don't want to go to the doctor because their doctor was so traumatizing about their weight as an adolescent. You know, the doctors need some bedside manner education on all that. It's important. We want everyone to be at a healthy weight, but still, I mean, you know, that's where a lot of eating disorders got started, was their doctor or their parents put them on a diet, you know, or their parents were dieting. So, and I'm not trying to make any pointed remarks about anybody. I'm just sharing kind of what I've observed and experienced.
Are there any last minute like takeaways that you would like to share with us?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've just told you a lot. I mean, again, I could have just sessions with people about breath work and relaxing. They need groundedness. We all do. And I guess again, I'm speaking to people that I do nutrition counseling with. I don't know if it's going to be the person you're teaching. It is. I mean, changing our eating habits is very difficult. If you're in there talking to the diabetic or the kidney patient, again, our eating habits stem from our childhood. So it's very hard to change our brain and to change our patterns. It's a lot of repetition. And finally, one day it's like, oh, yeah, okay, got it. So patience,
Yeah.
compassion.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, thank
Well,
you
I'm
so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You
We're
guys are
gonna
anybody's welcome. Corinne's got my info if you guys have any questions or want to reach out in any way.
thank you. And we're gonna send you a little thank you, something in the mail. So thank
Oh,
you so much.
well, you guys
All
have a
right.
good semester. Everything. See you soon. Thanks.
Okay, so now we're gonna get on with the presentation. So, okay. Can you all see the PowerPoint? Okay. So the spring membership dues are due, so you can scan the QR code and please pay dues if you haven't paid them already. They're $10. Okay. And then our volunteer opportunities, you can check out the Google Doc for different volunteer opportunities, and you can earn your service points that include volunteering experience and fundraising. For every $5, you get 1 point. And then don't forget to submit and log your volunteer experiences. And then we have the Tiger to Tiger mentoring. Thanks to everyone who participated in the National Nutrition Month project. We didn't get any more pictures, so only our group got pictures that we made yesterday. But if you have any more pictures, please send them in so that we can post them on the Instagram and share them later on. And if there's any questions about this, y'all can email Hannah Harper. And then it's not too late to donate for Easter baskets. They're still accepting donations until the end of today. Venmo, SNDA, LSU. And then I believe we're doing the Easter baskets tomorrow at 4-ish. And then we have our awards that are going to be announced at our next meeting. The nominations are going to be open through April 24th. And we need to log your service for the service awards because it's based on points. And then there's also the senior choice faculty ballot that is going to be emailed to the seniors. So if y'all know any people that y'all want to nominate, please nominate these people. Oh yeah, Easter basket assembly tomorrow at Nap Hall Lounge at 4 p.m. And then we still have merch available. If anyone wants merch, email Dr. McKinley with your size and your quantity. And then if it's available, she'll email you back and then you can pay and pick it up. And then congrats on everyone who ran for the executive board. Mags is our president-elect, and then Aline will be our secretary, and then Cameron will be our treasurer. And then we still have some chair positions available. The basket chairs, social media marketing, historian, land brand liaison, and then there's the application links. So if you are interested or you know anyone interested, please let them know about this.
Frank, can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Can you do two positions at
Yes.
once?
you can.
We're gonna wait until the fall before we start asking people to double up. Because we might have some freshmen coming in that might want to try something. Or folks that are just too tired right now to realize they should be doing something next year.
Are you thinking of doing another one, Margaret?
You're on fundraising. I don't know if I told you that.
I am?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're also on fundraising together.
Okay.
There you go.
Nice. Congrats, Katie, for land outstanding student in dietetics. And then our member of the month is Lydia. Lydia, thank you so much for being our president and for volunteering and just everything that you've done for the club. And thank you for teaching me how to be the president now. And then our spring meeting is going to be April 29th in the Nat Paul Lounge. We're having a baked potato party. More info will come soon. And it's going to be at 4:30 p.m. Y'all should totally come. I'm bringing green onions from my garden. Thank y'all for joining. Follow SNDA on Instagram and Facebook. Any other questions?
Yes, I sent Dr. McKinley a question in the chat.
Okay.
For faculty, senior faculty member of the year. Yeah,
Yes.
Barleycorn got it last year, so we try not to get.
Okay, that was the
Oh, and then
question.
Dory's already gotten it twice. I've gotten it, so I wanted to try to expand it out with more faculty. So those were the three that Corinne and I were chatting about that y'all.
That works for me.
Maybe my hand's been on the ballot, I think, every time. She just hasn't won it. Unless because I know, do y'all want Barleycorn on the ballot? Because you want her to have a fighting chance for it this year? I mean, it's
I
your
was
award.
more so I was asking like who had already won it because I figured that's why you weren't putting certain people on it. Was because they already won.
Or we just try not to do the very next year.
Right.
But she won it last year, so she'd win it every year. No.
Yeah, I don't think I think if we put her name on the ballot, the other people wouldn't have a chance.
We'll stick with Keenan, Brandy, and Judy.
Yes.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that in a separate email. I already have it in my drafts from last year, so I can just pull it out. I just got to update the ballot.
Wait, what about Dr. Wise? Would he be on there? No.
Not everyone's had him.
Yeah, I didn't
No,
have
some people
him.
don't even know him, so it would.
Oh, Lydia, you've never had him?
Nope. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but I have Kriti for the seminar. So,
It's gonna take a couple years for us to put him on the ballot.
right.
Because 11-10 students have to get to the senior year.
Oh, okay, yeah.